it's Melanie. Welcome back to my channel, I Heart Stitching. Don't forget to subscribe for weekly videos, and today I'm going to show you how I made this quilt top behind me. This is a layer cake quilt, so I used a layer cake by Moda from this fabric line Lush Uptown, 42 10-inch squares. That's what a layer cake is. And I'm kind of going to talk a little bit about the principles and kind of how I did my layout. There's something a little bit special about this quilt in terms of the layout, if you saw the picture. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, show you how I pieced it all together. This is a really fast and great project for a nice size quilt. You could do this top in a day, and yeah, let's get going. I'm going to show you all the steps on how I did it. Okay everyone, so here are my 42 half square triangles that I made from my layer cake. If you need a refresher on how to do a half square triangle, I will link the video right around here. But if you already know how to do a half square triangle, what I recommend when you're using your layer cake is to choose fabrics that are high contrast. High contrast being either in color or in pattern. So for example, this block right here is high contrast because this one is red and this one is tan. If this side had also been red, you wouldn't really be able to see this line, and you're not going to get as much of an effect as you're creating your layout. So once you have all of your half square triangles made using as high contrast as possible, there are 42 total that you will end up with if you're using a Moda layer cake at least. And then you want to determine your layout. Now I have this nice big design board. I have a video on how to make a design board if you want to check that out. But if you want to put it on a table or put it on the floor, that's fine too. Just somewhere where you can take a step back and look at what your layout is looking like. For example, I have this arrow, this intentional arrow that I specifically placed all of my lighter fabrics to create this arrow, accentuated by these more orange toned fabrics here to kind of draw your eye in this way. I wanted to show you kind of how you can really mix things up with this really simple half square triangle block by just being creative with your layout. Now the other thing that I wanted to mention with especially using half square triangles is you often get a secondary pattern. So for example, you have these here. So let's say these outside pieces were all white and these were all red. You would have a very noticeable square shape on its side, and you could utilize that with your layout as well. So this is the layout that I've chosen, but I wanted to give you just some different tips and ideas of how to make a layout with your layer cake, whatever layer cake you are using. Also, it doesn't have to be a layer cake. It could be 10-inch square cuts of yardage that you have. So the layer cake is just easy because it's already pre-cut. Another way to determine kind of how your design is looking, if you can take a step back, another tip is to take a photo of it with your cell phone, and that will kind of shrink everything down and you'll really be able to get an idea of how it's looking if you have some kind of subtle pattern changes, kind of like I do here. So once you have all of your half square triangles made, you've determined your layout, and now it's time to sew it all up.
Okay, so here I am doing my kind of strategy for keeping all of my pieces organized. I always keep my top pair on the top of my pile as I'm creating it, putting my right sides together, going all of the way down for these first two columns. If you have your own strategy and your way of doing this, do that. I'm just kind of showing you what I do in case you're a beginner. So I'm showing you here how I am very careful about taking my pile over to my sewing machine so that I don't get confused on which side I'm supposed to be sewing together. So here I am doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Quilting is always a 1/4 inch unless otherwise specified. And as you're going, you can kind of pay a little bit of attention to those seams on the ends. You can see here where they're kind of connecting. Some of them may interlock, some of them may just line up, so just be aware of that as you're sewing down. If you did a good job of squaring up your blocks like I mentioned in the half square triangle video, then you shouldn't have too much of a problem with this. So here I am just trimming my threads and making sure I'm keeping everything organized with that top pair again on the top of my pile. That way I always know where it's supposed to be. Now here's my 3 piles from my 6 columns that I've already completed. And then this is what I do to create my rows. I take the top two from the first two piles and place them right sides together and sew those up. Then I open that up and I take my last pair from that third pile and I sew that one up. So again, if you have your own strategy, just keep doing it how you normally do it. And then what I do is I pin these rows up on my design board so that I don't get confused as to where things are supposed to be, and I keep track of everything. Especially since the layout is so important on this quilt, I'm always very careful to make sure nothing gets, mixed up. So here I am just putting my completed rows up on my design board as I finish them. And you kind of need some pins because the seams make them a little bit heavy. So here I'm going to show you how I nest my seams together. I've showed you this before, but just as a refresher, you want to iron your seams in opposite directions. So this is my first row and my second row, and I'm ironing those seams in the opposite directions. That way when you place them right sides together, those seams will lock together and you'll get a much more perfect point. So sew these down, 1/4 inch seam allowance again, and what I do is I kind of line up those seams and put my finger on the seams as it's going through the sewing machine so everything stays nice and lined up as I'm going through. I just stop, reposition everything, lock those seams together and sew it down. If that's not creating a perfect result for you, you can just go ahead and pin all of those seams together before you sew your seam, and that will help you make sure you have everything looking really good. So all the way down, and then what you want to do is iron those seams open. As you can see, it gets really bulky right here where we have all of those triangles kind of coming together. So you want to iron these seams, these long seams going across your quilt, open. And once you finish that, your quilt top is done. Thanks so much for watching.
Okay guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to send me pictures over on my Facebook page, tag me on Instagram, send me pictures on Twitter. I'd love to see what you guys are working on. Hopefully this inspired you to create your own quilt top using a layer cake. Don't forget to check out my blog, iheartstitching.com, for more fun, inspiring things, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!